I've already been reasonably mean to him today already, so we're fine.
I can't wait till we get to the unreasonable part of the day. I'm so excited for that part.
I know. It's usually around 8 o'clock at night when I'm about to go to bed.
And you're done.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Blair.
And I'm Kirsten, and we are mediocre content. And it literally is the middle of the month already. Horrifying.
Very terrifying.
Which is perfect, because it is spooky season after all.
Spooky, scary skeletons.
Oh my goodness.
Chills down my spine.
When TikTok was playing that last year, I don't think I didn't sing it for like 3 months afterwards.
That's literally me, like during Christmas, just like waltzing around my house like spooky, scary skeletons.
Yeah, Christmas.
Yeah.
Nice. You know what? That's a Christmas vibe. I get it.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, if you go the Ebenezer Scrooge route, it very well could be.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I'm also ashamed to say that I do not have my costume yet.
Boo.
I mean, you don't have to scare me.
So we went to Spirit Halloween yesterday.
Of course.
And we walked around for a while, and I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't not be Barbie this year. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. You and
I can't.
40,
I know it's basic.
People. Yeah.
I know it's basic, but like the whole thing is,
yeah.
If I'm Barbie and other people are Barbie, then we can just wave to each other and be like, "Hi, Barbie."
Oh my goodness, yes.
I appreciate that. And if you saw the movie, you appreciate that as well.
Yeah, because there's tons of them, right?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's all different versions. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm going to be Barbie and Chris is going to be Alan.
I love that. Our friends are also doing a Barbie costume as well. So
I'm very excited.
It's just the thing of the season. It's just what was it's just really popular this year for good reason. And
most years I tried to be a little off the beaten path, but like this year I really feel like I need to be Barbie. Just
and that's
needs to
okay.
happen.
That's okay. I saw somebody had posted a video of saying like, everybody loves pumpkin spice. Why would I get that? No, I will have my black like coffee. And I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. But the reality is like sometimes it's okay to like what everybody likes because everybody likes it for a good reason. Like it's
because I like it.
Because you
that
like
should
it.
It's the full sentence because I like it.
And it's good. And so of course everybody likes it.
Exactly.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's okay to be different, but like I don't think it should be labeled as basic. If you really want to be Barbie, freaking
I agree.
the Barbie, Yeah.
And
I'm not going to be Barbie, but I think people that do should have a lot of fun with it because it's probably going to be really cute. I've even seen people cutting out those like boxes and like they're taking the boxes with them. Yeah.
Spirit Halloween has a costume where it's just the Barbie box.
Oh, is it? That's so cute.
Yeah. And then you can like dress up. There was a couple of different Barbie options. There was roller skate Barbie from the movie. And then there's also the jumpsuit, the pink jumpsuit, Barbie jumpsuit, which is from the movie as well.
Okay.
Which is what I am going to be.
Cute.
And because the jumpsuit's easy, you don't really have to do anything else to it. You just like put on, I have these like white combat boots, and then I'm going to get some really fun earrings, and I think it's going to be perfect. And then let's see, there was that one, there was the box, and then there was just like traditional like Barbie, and it was like a dress that said Barbie on it.
Yeah, that's pretty generic too. Yeah. It's gonna be adorable. I don't know which one our friend is doing, but it's gonna be cute.
Yeah, I mean you could do it a million different ways, honestly.
And that's what makes Barbie so versatile.
Indeed.
Yeah, and so inclusive. Really,
I agree. Yeah. Also, the jumpsuit will be easy for handing out candy because I don't have to worry about like bending in like weird places,
That's true.
Some of those dresses be short.
You know what? It's for another episode, but I have some real gripes with a lot of the costume companies that design for women.
Oh my God.
It irritates the crap out of me.
Of course, yesterday we had to we had to go by like the nurse section, right? Because I'm always, as a nurse, I'm always curious about like what fresh hell do they have us dressing up in this year? And they had variety of options. I will say I'm very proud that there was a regular nurse that had scrubs. Which
Nice.
I think
Okay.
is the most appropriate and most accurate if that's what you want to be.
True.
However, there was
Mm-hmm.
one costume. It was called cardiac arrest.
Oh, of course it was. Always with the
It was
puns
like
too.
it was called cardiac arrest, and it was like a black mini dress with
Mm-hmm.
like a black nurse hat with a red little cross on it. And I'm like, okay, but like I didn't know you could be cardiac arrest for Halloween. I
I
didn't know
didn't,
it was a noun.
I didn't know you could embody that.
Right. But apparently you can.
Oh
So
my
that's nice.
goodness. And you could probably, the thing is too, like, I do not want to dress up in something, especially because, like, usually when we're dressing up, it's around other people. So it's like our friends or family or
Sure.
something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want my bum hanging out in front of
Right.
my friend. Like, I want to hang out
Right.
with my friends. My bum can be
Right.
covered for that. Like, I just
Right. Like
don't
if
get
we
it.
were in our early 20s and we were like
Maybe.
going out to the club, I mean, you
Sure.
probably wouldn't because you've been
Absolutely
a
not.
grandma for your whole life, but
My
like
whole existence.
your whole life. But like I could see it, and
Right.
we've
That's
been
fine.
there. It's
But like
it's happened.
all of these people are like families with children and like
Right. Like
you know
the
what I
whole
mean?
well, and we get a lot of trick-or-treaters here. So like the
Right.
whole neighborhood's gonna be coming up to the
Children.
house. And I don't really
Yeah.
want, you
No.
know,
Yeah.
there's a costume, there's a perfect costume for a perfect time and place, and not always
Correct.
is it family appropriate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And
Yeah.
with that disclaimer, let's get into ours.
Before we get started, we just like to let you know that we are not experts on anything. If you've come to this podcast for any kind of advice, emotional, spiritual, life,
Yeah.
we are not the place to get that.
Thank
Okay.
God. We'd be terrible at it.
But we are the place to learn about things that we enjoy. You can learn about things that we like, but also
Correct.
things that that you may not have known about previously. So we encourage you to like learn along with us.
Yes.
And we have no good news today
Right.
because we're talking about spooky things and it's going to take up a lot of our time, which I appreciate because I'm a big Halloween person.
Yes.
So I think with that, Kirsten, take it away.
Okay. So the topic for today is, well, okay. So the title is called Fright Night, and that's because we're going to be talking about a little bit of history around one of the multiple of the iconic Halloween ghouls, right? So we're talking witches, werewolves, vampires. Just want to cover the spectrum on some of our favorite characters. Some of you might be dressing up as some of these this year, so get a little history lesson on your own costume choice. That's kind of cute.
Definitely.
And we're going to start off with what I think, other than vampires, is one of the most iconic, and that's witches. I can't tell you how many times I've dressed up as a witch over the years. Like,
oh yeah,
it's simple, it's simple.
Totally.
So witches are obviously a classic spooky-ish season costume, and images of witches have appeared in various forms throughout history, of course, and that's from evil, wart-nosed women huddling over their cauldron, cackling, riding their brooms in the sky, wearing these
Clearly
giant...
a man wrote that story.
Yes, exactly. But the real history of witches is dark, and not this like kind of like a caricature of something. It's actually quite horrible and dates back as far as about 900 BC. So early witches were people who, of course, at that time practiced witchcraft, used magic spells, called upon spirits to bring about change, or those that were perceived to have been doing those things. And that's a very important distinction.
It is.
Most witches were thought to be pagans doing the devil's work. Many, however, were actually just natural healers and were so-called wise women whose choice of profession was misunderstood. So I would say almost like pre-medical, almost.
Right. So I think a lot of this particular assumptions had to be pre-science, like pre-medication, because if things were to happen to the general population, like getting sick or,
Sure.
having like food poisoning or something, the people that didn't get it were probably the witches, quote unquote,
Right, witches, right.
because they knew what to do to avoid those things.
Right. And they also would then potentially know how to heal sickness, which would be seen as this incredible feat of the time.
Precisely.
And again, misguided judgment. They're like, she's a witch. And it's like, well, no, I'm just a nurse, but thank you.
Thank you so much. That is such a compliment for my profession.
Right. Wow, I've really come so far.
It's witch and educated drug dealer, I think, are the two for nurses.
I like that very much.
I do
like
too.
The second one a lot.
Yeah.
I will say in modern times, though, and maybe then as well, like there probably were those who practiced things outside of natural healing that might have been considered witchcraft, but not like somebody cursing someone. It's more like it's just a lifestyle choice and like a religious or belief system that they carry.
Correct.
It's just a lot, okay? It's a lot. It is unclear, however, exactly when witches came on the historical scene, but one of the earliest records is actually in the Bible, apparently. And it's in Book 1 Samuel, thought to be written between 931 BC and 721 BC. And it tells the story of when King Saul sought the witch of Endor to summon the dead prophet Samuel's spirit to help him defeat the Palestine army. So,
is Samuel in the Old Testament or the New Testament?
My grandma would be so disappointed in me right now.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
It's okay.
Let me look it up because I
think it's old.
I was going to say, this sounds like an Old Testament story because the Old Testament has some cool stuff in it.
So yeah, I think it is Old Testament. Okay. So the witch roused Samuel, who then prophesied the death of Saul and his sons. The next day, according to the Bible, Saul's sons died in battle and Saul committed suicide. There you go. So other Old Testament verses. So
good. Okay.
Condemn witches, such as the oft-cited Exodus 22:18, which says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Additional biblical passages caution against divination, chanting, or using witches to contact the dead, although apparently Saul did not get that memo at the time. So
clearly, yeah. So here we have probably some early uses of the Bible against a certain population.
Yeah, absolutely, as one does. The hysteria portion of witches kind of took hold of Europe pretty early on. We're talking like mid 1400s ish. When many accused witches then confessed, often under torture, of course, to a variety of wicked behaviors. And I say, of course, because sometimes you just say yes because the no is worse in terms of what you're dealing with.
And like, obviously these women in the mid 1400s didn't go through some kind of CIA like torture training. Like they were just regular people.
Yeah, just pulled off the street. And it could be, we're also assuming a lot here, like I know when people talk about the Salem witch trials, I mean, they would just pull anything out to be like, well, she plucked her nose hair earlier this morning. She never does that. She's a witch. Like, it's that kind of thing.
And let's remember that as a result of these witch hunts, down the road, we have the plague. Because why? Because they got rid of all the cats. Because who likes cats? Witches.
That's right.
So here we are. Y'all played yourself.
It's just so true. I mean, if you don't have cats, what do you have? Rats, freaking parasitic infested rats.
And so the rats had the fleas, and the fleas had the virus, and the virus infected the people, and it's a whole thing.
Science, people.
And that's science and food chain, kind of in a weird way.
Blair Science Corner.
Just had to bring it up.
It's true. So within a century, witch hunts were common, and most of the accused were executed by burning at the stake or hanging. Single women, widows, and other women on the margins of society were, of course, especially targeted, and that's more probably because they didn't like them and were trying to find an excuse to get rid of them out of society because they were weird or not like integrated into the cult mind or whatever. Anyway,
Right.
I said what I said. Between the years of 1500 and 1660, up to 80,000 suspected witches were put to death in Europe. Around 80% of them were women thought to be in cahoots with the devil and filled with lust. Because who
In
wouldn't?
cahoots.
I've seen freaking Morningstar. Okay, he's cute.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Germany had the highest witchcraft execution rate, while Ireland had the lowest. So that's cute, I guess. I don't know. It's fun facts.
I don't know what to think about that. Yeah.
I mean, even at the lowest, the fact that you had any is kind of sad.
Yeah.
The publication of Malleus Maleficarum, written by two well-respected German Dominicans in 1486, likely spurred witch mania to go viral. The book, usually translated as The Hammer of Witches, was essentially a guide on how to identify, hunt, and interrogate witches. This publication labeled witchcraft as a heresy and quickly became the authority for Protestants and Catholics trying to flush out witches living among them. And for more than 100 years, the book sold more copies of any other book in Europe, sans the Bible, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, here also in the States, this gave way to the Salem witch trials, which we touched on.
Sure.
And this was in Massachusetts. The Salem witch trials began when 9-year-old Elizabeth Harris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams began suffering from fits, body contortions, and uncontrolled screaming. Of course, today there's a scientific explanation for a lot of this, in particular, a fungus that caused them to become poisoned, and then, of course, then caused the spasms and delusions.
Oh.
But ultimately, around 150 people were accused, 18 of which were put to death.
Right.
And that's witches in a nutshell. Obviously, the Salem witch trials are significantly more in depth than that, but I'm not going to go in more in depth than that.
That's a whole podcast.
That is literally an entire podcast. So we're just going to skip right on over. Vampires. No, this isn't the Edward Cullen version.
Oh, darn.
I know, right? I wish they were shiny. Oh my god. Also,
sorry for my bad singing there, but that I like.
It's fine.
Gotta do. It's Twilight, man.
Somebody posted a video of the clothes in Target right now with that background, and it's giving Bella. If I may say so. I thought it was great.
Twilight fans unite.
The books were really great. I'm not gonna
lie. The books were so good.
The books were fantastic. I really enjoyed those, and I'm really sad that it's kind of like that the whole this is a tangent, I'm sorry, but that the whole genre has turned into a joke for a lot of people. It just so hurts.
The books were good.
Yeah.
I rewatched the original Twilight the other day. It is awful.
Perfect.
So bad.
You know what? As a teenager, though, I was like,
I know. This
spot
is
on.
like, honestly, as a teenager, I was like, this deserves an Oscar. This is amazing. This is everything. And like now I watch it again and I'm just like, this is the worst.
This is awful
acting I have ever seen. And like the amount of like awkward pauses and just like angst is like palpable, and it's awful. It's so bad. It's like so bad it's good.
But that's literally just like that's what makes it so good, because as an adult you're like, ew, but as a teenager you're like, that's love. That's exactly love. That's what I want. That's literally what I want. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. The angst is there.
It is there.
Oh God.
2020 is hindsight is great.
Oh man.
These are not those though. So
right.
Instead, these were very evil mythological beings that would roam the night in search of victims to, of course, suck their blood. Ew. Often associated with gross.
I used to tell patients, because they were this is a tangent. You're fine. Really quick. I used to tell patients that because they would complain to us about like having to get their blood drawn every day in the hospital, right? And I'm like, well, we have to feed the vampires downstairs in the basement.
The worst. The worst.
Like, I think 8 out of 10 times it got a little chuckle.
What else are we gonna do?
What else are we gonna do?
They're starving.
Right.
That's awful. I love it. Can you imagine selling that to a child? Like, well,
oh no, I would never tell that to a child. Only adults.
That's a shame.
No, because they're already freaked out. I would
That's
never do
fair.
that.
Yeah. I don't think that I would chuckle. I would already be passed out, so it wouldn't really matter.
That's true. For those who don't know, Kirsten passes out when she gets her blood drawn. It's fun time for everybody involved.
Every nurse loves me. I don't think I've had a single nurse that's like, oh, yes, she's here.
You're my favorite patient.
She's the one that needs to lay down.
Yes. And I need to offer her copious amounts of juice.
I never want the juice. Stop offering me
you
juice.
You have to have the juice,
they
Kirsten.
They really do try to force it on you.
You need the juice or water. At least have some water.
I'm like halfway out the door and they just try like one more time. They're like, juice. And I'm like, no, I'm good.
Drink that juice.
Drink the juice.
That's me with my patients every day. I'm like, drink that juice.
I will not join your nurse cult. You can't make me. Oh my god, it's so legit too. I feel bad declining so often because they keep incessantly asking.
Well, because we want your blood sugar to be okay, and like we want you to be like perked back up with a little bit of sugar, and like there's reasoning behind it. But,
for sure,
you don't have to have it, obviously.
That I think that's a lie. I think that's made up. I think if she could, she would force it down my throat.
Well, and the other thing is because you passed out, that means that your blood pressure at one point was low.
Oh yeah.
And then you have to bring it back up. And a great way to do that with a healthy individual is give them fluids.
You know what bothers me though? They always want fasting blood work.
Yes.
You know, so like of course it's low. It is 8 a.m. and I haven't eaten anything since like 4 or 5 p.m. the night before. The juice. But I don't need the juice.
Yes, you do. Your blood sugar is low. Your blood pressure is low. You're probably dizzy and not feeling well. And you need the juice. Before. Juice solves all the problems.
I was dizzy when she rolled out the cart with the needles on it.
That's what I'm saying. You need the juice.
No, I just need to not be there. That's great. If anybody's interested in my medical history, we could do a pod on it.
Oh, that would be so fun.
Fantastic.
Okay, right. I'll let you go. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're doing, what are we? Vampires.
Right. Vampires. Okay. That's how we got here.
It's like, are we still on witches? What are you talking about?
No, we're on vampires now. We got
Specifically, Count Dracula, which I think a lot of people know, or if you don't, well, I'll tell you where it came from. So Count Dracula, which is the legendary subject of Bram Stoker's epic 1897 novel, is essentially the core history of vampires, beginning before even Bram Stoker was born. Vampires harken back to ancient Greek mythology and embody a superstition that thrived during the Middle Ages. There are almost as many different characteristics of vampires as there are vampiric legends, but the main ones are, of course, that they drink human blood. They typically will drain the victim using their fangs and then turn them into vampires, although that is a little touch and go because some say, oh, well, if they're a virgin, they'll turn into a vampire. If they're not, they're turned into like a zombie, basically. And we'll talk about zombies later.
Oh.
Yeah, apparently there's a discrepancy. So I don't know.
Wow.
If I find a vampire,
I didn't know
that
there was like a chaste requirement to be a vampire.
Of course there is, because this is
that would not work in the Twilight universe.
I know. I know. But the thing is, I feel like, so a vampire in general, from what I understand, and maybe they'll talk about it, I don't remember, but it is it's thought to also be attributed to a certain disease, like a physical disease, or also when a person passes, what happens to the body afterwards can make it look as though it's taking on some of these, like the fangs and things like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I know from a medical standpoint that is true, and that did happen, and that was attributed to vampirism, but I also strongly believe that this was also considered a man's thing, like, oh, if you're chaste, then, you know, whatever.
You get an afterlife,
I guess.
That it. So like being a vampire would be your afterlife. Is that what you're trying to say?
I guess so. Yeah.
Interesting.
Got to protect your women, I guess. They were like, oh, well, if you're chaste, you'll turn into a vampire and you'll have to drink human blood. But if you come with me,
Oh, I see.
You won't have to worry about it
Okay.
because they can't make
Okay.
anything out of you. Yeah,
Right. Right.
that's more what I was insinuating.
I got it now.
Mhm.
Okay.
In addition to the whole situation where you're turning into a vampire if you get bitten with their fangs, blah, 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 the other general characteristics that they assume a vampire has
Mm-hmm.
is that they only hunt at night because sunlight weakens their powers for some reason.
True. Mm-hmm.
Some may also have, of course, the ability to morph into a bat or apparently a wolf, which I didn't know.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
That's
apparently
interesting.
they could do one or the
Again,
other.
contrary to the Twilight universe.
True, right? Because otherwise, they're completely separate and they hate each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
They also would then have super strength and often have a hypnotic sensual effect on their victims, assumed to lure them in so they can, of course, drink their blood.
Right.
And then, of course, the final one is that they can't see their own reflection in a mirror and they cannot cast shadows. Which,
Cute.
to be fair, if you can't go in the sunlight, that would be a good reason to not cast a shadow. But I guess you could cast a shadow if the moon is bright enough.
Yeah. Yeah, you could.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's true.
It's thought that Bram Stoker named Count Dracula after Vlad Dracul, also known as Vlad the Impaler. He was born in Transylvania, Romania, and he ruled Wallachia, which I don't know if that's pronounced Wallachia, but that's what I'm saying. And that's in Romania. And this was between 1456 and 1462. Some historians describe him as a just yet brutally cruel ruler who valiantly fought off the Ottoman Empire and earned his nickname because his favorite way to unalive his enemies was to impale them on a wooden stake.
With a wooden stake, which is relevant.
It is.
Because that is how you kill a vampire.
Precisely. And if you have to choose a favorite way to unalive your enemies, I mean, that's not a terrible choice, truly.
It is a very skilled choice, though, because you
It's
have
true.
to get close to your enemy in order to be able to do it.
So skill is involved, so keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the skill. According to legend, Vlad enjoyed dining amidst his dying victims and dipping his bread in their blood, which is probably where the story stemmed from. Again, you're just kind of taking
the body of Christ.
Oh my God, no, that is different.
I'm sorry.
No,
okay. I'm sorry.
My grandma would be so ashamed. I know. Whether those gory tales are true is unknown, of course. Some people like to stretch the truth, so who really knows? And many people believe these stories sparked, of course, the imagination to create Count Dracula, who was also from Transylvania, sucked his victim's blood, and could only be killed by having a stake through the heart, as you stated. According to Dracula expert Elizabeth Miller, however, Stoker didn't base Count Dracula's life on Vlad Dracul at all. Nonetheless, the similarities between the two are intriguing, at least. Mercy Brown may rival Count Dracula as the most notorious vampire. Unlike Count Dracula, however, Mercy was in fact a real person who lived in Exeter, Rhode Island. Haha, shout out to Rhode Island.
I love that this is a woman. And
right?
I also have not heard of her, but I'm very excited about what you're about to say.
Slay Queen is all we're going to say.
Exactly.
She was the daughter of someone named George Brown, who was a farmer in Exeter, Rhode Island at the time. And after George lost many family members, including Mercy, in the late 1800s to tuberculosis, which was running rampant at the time, unfortunately.
Where's John Green when you need him? Honestly.
I know. His community used Mercy as a scapegoat to explain all of their deaths. And it was common at the time to blame several deaths on that one family member. And they were considered the undead as well. The bodies of each dead family member were often exhumed and searched for signs of vampirism. And when Mercy's body was exhumed and didn't display severe decay, which wasn't surprising since her body was placed in an above ground vault during a New England winter. And if you don't know what that is, it's freaking cold. So essentially she was essentially in a makeshift fridge almost.
I was going to say she's being refrigerated.
She was 1,000% being refrigerated. So she wasn't decaying as fast because she wasn't in the ground,
right.
whatever.
But I don't think they knew that at the time.
Definitely not.
Okay.
So because, and I know that because the townspeople accused her of then being a vampire and making her family sick from her grave. She was dead. But
not knowing that tuberculosis was a thing, and the fact that like the air was making them sick in the home.
Yeah, right.
Right. Okay.
So they cut out her heart, burned it, and then fed the ashes to her sick brother. Ew.
Did not help.
And
Did
then...
not. I can tell you right now that did not help him.
Indeed, because the next sentence says, perhaps not surprisingly, he died shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sad, but true.
My professional opinion, not helpful.
They really thought they did something.
They really...
So anyway, that's unfortunate, but Mercy is probably one that not a lot of people know about. So I wanted to make sure to share that story.
Surprisingly, there's nothing about garlic in this particular thing.
There is not.
But I really do like garlic, and I feel like when I eat garlic, I'm like, I'm keeping the vampires away. It makes me feel good
At least we
myself.
know you're not a vampire as well.
Right.
So
right.
That's great. Good for
Can confirm.
You.
If I had to pick a character, a Halloween character that I would definitely be a witch, like hands down.
Witches are perfect.
Yes.
Truly.
Mm-hmm. I have a black cat. I practice in the art of medicine. Like it's all there. It's written on the walls.
Tracking.
Blair Witch Trials. I mean, come on.
literally your identity right now.
Literally my identity right now.
How could you be anything else?
Right.
I agree that witches are also super fun. You know, they have a lot of fun. I've heard they have a lot of fun.
I cannot confirm or deny. It's kind of like blondes have more fun. It just really depends. Yeah.
It's just really up to the individual.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for vampires. We're now going to move into what we thought was their mortal enemy, the werewolves, but turns out they could also be wolves, so who knows, really. According to some legends, werewolves are people who morph into vicious, powerful wolves, while others claim that they are a mutant combination of human and wolf, though all of them are considered bloodthirsty beasts. Fun times. Descriptions of werewolves do date back as early as Greek mythology as well, and early Nordic folklore. It's unclear exactly when and where the werewolf legend originated, where some scholars believe that it was actually debuted in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was the oldest known Western prose, when Gilgamesh jilted a potential lover because she had turned her previous mate into a wolf. So there's rough. That. Yeah, it's a bad day. Werewolves made another early appearance in Greek mythology with the legend of Lycaon. According to the legend, Lycaon, the son of Pelasgus, that's a hard one.
Pelasgus?
We're going to go with that.
Pelasgus.
They angered the god Zeus when he served him a meal made from the remains of a sacrificed boy, and as punishment, the enraged Zeus turned Lycaon and his sons into wolves, which may also be where we get lichen, which is another term for werewolf. Yeah. True. And werewolves also emerged in early Nordic folklore, as we discussed. The saga of the Volsungs tell the story of a father and son who discovered wolf pelts that had the power to turn people into wolves for 10 days. The father-son duo donned the pelts, transformed into wolves, and went on a killing rampage in the forest. Not good.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. It made them ragey.
It's like their first instinct is like, let's kill everyone.
I guess that's good. What happens. Those pelts were interesting. Their rampage did end when the father ended up attacking his son, causing a lethal wound, and the son only survived because a kind raven gave the father a leaf with healing powers. So go Ravens, I guess. That's great.
First of all, we can't talk about football right now.
Second of all, not the NFL.
This is not the NFL.
Dagnabbit. Yeah.
I guess they didn't have any like control over their thoughts. They just became like raged wolves, like raged wolves.
I think that's legitimately like the premise of the transformation. Okay. Like you leave your human mind behind.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just trying to determine the scope of the powers here.
No,
That's
that's
all.
fair. The pelts were like, I'm gonna take that brain and give you a dog brain that just wants
Mm,
to eat everything, and that's
mm.
what happened.
Okay.
Actually, I could have
Good.
just told it like that and it would have gone smoother.
It would have been the same. Yeah.
Same. Many so-called werewolves from centuries ago were in fact serial killers, however, and France had its fair share. In 1521, Frenchmen Pierre Bergot and Michael Verdun allegedly swore allegiance to the devil and claimed to have an ointment that turned them into wolves.
It's always downhill when you swear allegiance to the devil.
Honestly, not great.
Not great.
After confessing to brutally murdering several children, they were both burned to death at the stake, and burning was thought to be the one of few ways to actually kill a werewolf, which is why it was done that way. Ironically, it is also the way to kill a witch and also a way to murder a vampire. So the theme is there.
Burn, baby, burn.
I
Disco
mean,
and burn. Oh.
I feel like they had a lot of sticks around. They're like, this has got to be the answer. Like, we
I
have so
mean,
many trees.
we have just so many trees.
This is the answer to getting rid of all of the potential nasties around us.
Well, but they did try drowning witches for a while too. That
That's
was a
true.
thing.
That's true. They're like, well, if she survives, she's a witch. If she doesn't, we made a mistake, but she's dead, so
It's fine.
it's fine.
It's fine either way.
Who does that? Anyway. Giles Garnier, known as the Werewolf of Dole, was another 16th century Frenchman whose claim to fame was also an ointment with wolf morphing abilities. I don't know how we went from like wolf pelts to like wolf ointment.
Right. And then
Also,
there should be some biting stuff here.
right, or like
Shortly.
scratching, because
Yeah.
I'm gonna get into a little Harry Potter lore here as well. Isn't it Fenrir? Is that his name? That was the wolf in the situation outside of Lupin. But the way that you became a werewolf was through either a bite or a scratch from a werewolf as a werewolf.
Yeah. So
Right.
Friar Greyback or something like that.
Friar,
I
that's
think.
what it was.
Yes.
Okay.
That was the main
Yeah.
bad guy werewolf. And yes,
Yeah.
you have to bite or be scratched.
Yeah. That's what I
And
thought.
I think depending on how well or you were bitten or scratched, then it varied your powers a little bit. And then you had to drink the potion. That's why Lucian was able to teach at Hogwarts, is because Snape was brewing him the potion
right
to keep him human.
Right.
But then,
I mean, yeah. Okay.
We all know what happens. It's fine.
It's set. So anyway, we've got more ointment is the thing. And according to the legend, for Giles anyway, as a wolf, he viciously killed children and ate them. He too was burned to death at the stake, of course, for his monstrous crimes. Again, these are all just serial killers, just using an excuse. Whether Birgit...
What if we still burned our serial killers at the stake now?
Honestly, I feel like that's not a terrible idea. I'm not one for violence, but I don't know that I would be opposed. Also, keep in mind, these individuals, at least the ones that they just discussed, these two examples, were unaliving children.
Right, that's a problem.
I feel like that warrants the extra oomph for death. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
I just want to put that out there. So if you do that, we're burning you at the stake. That's the new law.
Okay.
Whether Birgit, Vernon, or Garnier were mentally ill, acted under the influence of hallucinogenic substance, or were just simply cold-blooded killers is up for debate, but it likely didn't matter to superstitious Europeans during that time frame, which was around the 16th century. To them, such heinous crimes could only be committed by a horrific beast, thus werewolf is kind of what they pegged it as. Some legends maintain werewolves shapeshifted at will due to a curse. However, others say that they transformed with the help of an enchanted sash or cloak made of wolf pelt, which we saw in the original story. And then even others, to our credit, claim that people would become werewolves after being scratched or bit by them. There's also the full moon situation where you're forced into becoming the werewolf. And that theory may not be as far-fetched as we think. According to a study conducted at Australia's Calvary Mater Newcastle Hospital, a full moon brings out the beast, in quotes, in many humans, which there's a lot of talk, and I know this to be true in like hospitals and things as well. Like when it's a full moon, everything kind of goes a little cray cray.
Yes.
And maybe you
I
could speak
don't.
to it
So,
as
yes,
well.
I would love to speak to this. I would just like to say, first of all, that if you work in a hospital, you know this to be true. You know this
Yeah.
to be fact. And like, it's not based in any science necessarily. It's
Right.
just the way that it is. And I don't know, maybe it's just like suggestion.
Yeah.
But like, I know when I worked on a full moon, all of
Mm-hmm.
my patients were a
Were a
little just
mess.
like things were happening. It wasn't necessarily violent behavior, but it was
Right.
definitely like something was going wrong.
Yeah.
Like, or somebody was just acting not right, or,
Right.
something crazy was happening.
Could be
And
like, yeah, internal chemistry or
especially,
something with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't know. I I like being a healthcare worker because there is a healthy level of like superstition,
Yeah.
and it just makes me, I don't know, it's like kind of fun. I don't know,
Yeah,
because yeah.
absolutely. No, I could see
So
that.
so yeah, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
100% true. I would stake my career on it. Like,
Yeah.
if there's a full moon,
You're
something
gonna have
weird's
something
gonna
weird.
happen.
Yeah. And I can say even outside of like the hospital, I've never worked in a hospital, of course. I'm not a health provider or anything. But I can say for certain in general, the full moon does bring out a lot of weirdness.
Yeah.
But the study found, in fact, that 91 violent acute behavior incidents at the hospital that they were studying between August 2008 and July 2009, 23% happened during a full moon. So it doesn't
Wild.
sound necessarily convincing, but percentages in that realm pretty high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Patients would attack staff and display wolf-like behaviors such as biting, spitting, and scratching, although many were under the influence of drugs, of course, or alcohol at the time.
Right.
So again, you're
Yeah.
talking about someone who's in there for a reason, potentially medically, but it
Right.
could be mental, substance, whatever.
A lot of dementia patients too experience those things.
Correct, exactly. So, of course, it's unclear exactly what may have influenced it or whether it was just a coincidence that it happened on a full moon as well.
Right.
To your credit, not a lot of studies been done, but for some reason we all know it to be true, and I love that.
Yeah. It's just one of those things.
Yeah. And that's it for werewolves.
Great.
The last one we're going to talk about before our break is zombies, which is great. Also another fan favorite, I feel.
True.
So the zombie is often portrayed as an undead, flesh-eating, decaying corpse and
Gross.
has seen a popularity surge in recent years thanks to, of course, media. You know, it is
Right.
what it
Yeah.
is, very
So The
popular.
Walking Dead was very
Right.
popular. My mom watched that show religiously for a while.
And I'll say, even before that one, there's tons of zombie movies and takes on zombies. There's video games, obviously, that encounters
Thriller.
friggin' Michael Jackson.
Mm.
Like, we've seen it, right? Unlike many other monsters, which are mostly a product of superstition and fear, zombies do, in fact, have a basis in fact. Several credible reports in medical journals describe people using certain compounds to first induce paralysis in people and then revive them. In Haitian voodoo culture, folklore featuring undead beings has been around for centuries. A zombie, according to pop culture and folklore, is usually either a reawakened corpse with a ravenous appetite or someone bitten by another zombie, which has now been infected by, quote, a zombie virus. They are usually portrayed as strong but kind of robotic beings with, of course, rotting flesh because they are undead by
Ew.
definition.
Mm-hmm.
Gross. Their only mission is to feed, and they typically don't really have conversations outside of a little, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
The ancient Greeks may have been the first civilization terrorized by a fear of the undead, as archaeologists have unearthed many ancient graves which contain skeletons pinned down by rocks and other heavy objects, assumedly to prevent them from reanimating, which apparently was a very real fear.
I love that. I love that they're like, okay, so Steve is dead. We just want to make sure he
Steve.
doesn't
Yes,
come
ancient
back
Greece,
to haunt
Steve.
us. So we're just gonna make sure that we like have a bunch of weights in there so that he
Yeah.
can't get out.
Yeah. We're just gonna take Steve's body and put him under 1,000 rocks.
Yeah.
Zombie folklore has been around for centuries in Haiti as well, possibly originating in the 17th century when West African slaves were brought into work on Haiti's sugarcane plantations. I don't know why that was so hard to say all at once. Brutal conditions left the slaves longing for freedom, and according to some reports, the life, or rather afterlife, of a zombie represented the horrific plight of slavery. Voodoo, sometimes spelled Vodou or Vodun, although here it's spelled Voodoo, the one that you would probably normally see out and about, is in fact a religion based in West Africa and practiced throughout Haiti and the Caribbean, Brazil, the South, the American South, and other places with an African-based heritage.
Yeah.
Many people who follow the voodoo religion today do believe in zombies as a myth, though some believe zombies are actually people revived by a voodoo practitioner known as a boker. Bokers have a tradition of using herbs, shells, fish, animal parts, bones, and of course other objects to create concoctions, including zombie powders, which contain tetrodotoxin, a deadly neurotoxin found in pufferfish, which is why you shouldn't be eating that, and some other marine species. So that's great. I think in The Sims, actually, if you eat pufferfish, you just dangle with death in The Sims as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, pufferfish sushi, they allude to that.
This makes me think of the American Horror Story season Coven.
Yeah.
And because like there's the witches, obviously,
Sure.
who are like the main storyline, but then it takes place in New Orleans. And so the witches live in this like mansion, but then there's also they touch on like voodoo practices of the African American, like, and they have to team up with the witches to like beat the ghost. It's a whole thing.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, used carefully at sublethal doses, this specific neurotoxin combination may cause zombie-like symptoms, such as difficulty walking, which I would argue can be done with something as simple as a beer or two, mental confusion, which I would also say the same for, and then respiratory problems, which I guess you could say. I don't know if
I mean, the lights are on, but
but
nobody's home. That's
absolutely
basically what's happening.
Yeah. Yes. High doses of it, however, can lead to total paralysis and, of course, coma, neither of which is great. And this could, of course, cause someone to appear dead and be buried alive, and then, unfortunately, revive, although just come out of the coma or come out of paralysis is really what's happening.
Sure.
And though it's rare, there are several credible reports in medical journals of people using these compounds to induce the paralysis in people and then, quote, revive them from the grave. But again, that's not actually what's happening. You're just coming out of paralysis. A 1997 article in the British medical journal The Lancet described 3 verifiable accounts of zombies. In one case, a Haitian woman who appeared to be dead was buried in a family tomb only to reappear 3 years later. Spooky. An investigation revealed that her tomb was filled with stones, and her parents agreed to admit her to a local hospital. That's horrifying. Also, being buried alive is mentally very taxing on me. Like,
I don't. It's like
horrifying.
One of my greatest fears.
Absolutely. In another well-documented case, a Haitian man named Clairvius Narcessi entered a local hospital with severe respiratory problems in 1962. Afterwards, he'd slipped into a coma and was declared dead, of course, being buried shortly after. But 18 years later, a man walked up to Angelica Narcissi in a village marketplace, insisting she was his sister. Doctors, townspeople, and family members all identified him as Clairvius, who claimed he had been buried alive, dug up, and put to work on a distant sugar plantation. That's also super creepy.
I don't like any of this.
Zombie! And I'm going to leave you with zombies, and we're going to head into a break and take a little bit of a spooky breather.
Hey man, did you hear Mediocre Content Podcast has more social platforms now?
Whoa, no way. What do they need those for? I thought they barely had an email.
Not sure, but they gotta be Delulu if they think that many people are trying to find them.
Exactly. Well, I guess we should play into their delusion then. Here are the ways you can contact the NCP host, if you really want to.
Connect with NCP on Gmail, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you want to listen to podcasts.
Or you can find all of their contacts by visiting Linktree/Mediocre Content Podcast.
Now, good luck in the second half of the pod. You'll need it.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the little break. We're now going to end the pod with mummies, which is great.
Yay.
Basic American ghost stories, also great.
Spooky.
And then we'll end with the infamy himself, the devil.
Seems good.
I mean, you gotta talk about it. You gotta talk about it.
Yeah.
So mummies. I think that the thing about mummies, right, is the fact that they are very much real. It's not like it's just based in folklore and like imagination station and things like that. Like there are mummies, and
that is correct. It is a real thing.
A mummy is a person or animal whose body has been dried or otherwise preserved after death. And when people think of a mummy, they often, of course, think of ancient Egyptians who have been making mummies as early as 3700 BC, excuse me. Mummies may not literally rise from their ancient tombs and attack with their arms outstretched, such as the Hollywood era versions, but they are, of course, quite real and do have a rather fascinating history. The practice of preserving a body as a mummy is widespread across the globe and throughout time, so even outside of Egypt, for example. Other civilizations, such as the Incans, Australian Aboriginals, Aztecs, Africans, ancient Europeans, and of course others, have practiced some form of mummification for thousands of years to honor and preserve the bodies of the dead. Mummification rituals do, of course, vary by culture, and it's thought that some cultures mummified all of their citizens. Others reserved the rite of passage for the wealthy or people of status. Since most bacteria can't thrive in extreme temperatures, exposing a corpse to the sun, fire, or freezing temperatures was an uncomplicated way to create a mummy, and we kind of figured that out from Mercy and her story when they thought she was a vampire.
Right.
Some mummies happened by accident. Take, for instance, the accidental mummies of Guanajuato.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Which is a collection of over 100 mummies found buried in above-ground crypts in Mexico. Those bodies weren't mummified on purpose. Instead, it's thought that either via extreme heat or the area's rich geological stores of sulfur and other minerals, that's exactly what would have spurred the actual mummification process. Because you can find, like in bogs, you can find fully preserved bodies because of the chemicals and other minerals that are there.
Or like when the volcano erupted in Pompeii, same thing, like all the ash like covered everybody.
Right, exactly. So there are, of course, accidental versions of this. It's not always just a ritualistic practice. Some Buddhist monks did practice self-mummification by spending years starving their bodies and only eating foods that promoted decay. And once their body fat was completely gone, they spent it's fine. It's interesting. They spent a few more years drinking poisonous sap to cause vomiting, getting rid of all bodily fluids. The poison also made the body an unsavory future host for corpse-eating bugs, which is great. When the time was right, the monks were then buried alive to await death and mummification. It did, of course, come quickly, but self-mummification seldom worked. So they were essentially trying to, while alive, embalm themselves.
That's wild.
And when you say it like that, it is.
Well, and it's kind of like, oh, so what diet are you doing?
monk
mark.
diet.
And then it's like, well, actually, I'm just trying to embalm myself. So I'm just going to eat everything that's disgusting and makes me want to barf all the time.
Can't wait till the bugs get me, Cheryl. It's kind of weird.
It is weird.
But no matter how a body was mummified, the end was to preserve as much skin and tissue as possible, and the priests of ancient Egypt are considered the experts on this exact process. Egypt's arid climate made it easy to dry out and, of course, then mummify a corpse. But the Egyptians routinely used a more elaborate process to ensure the dead experienced safe passage to the afterlife, because it was part of their ritual of the dead.
Right.
The mummification process for royalty, and often the wealthy, included washing the body, removing all organs sans the heart and placing them in jars, packing the body and organs in salt to remove moisture, embalming the body with resins, essential oils, and such as myrrh, cassia, juniper oil, and cedar oil, wrapping the embalmed corpse then in several layers of linen. Ancient Egyptians of all walks of life mummified deceased family members, but the process wasn't as elaborate for the poor. And that's also just because resources were not there as well. Some of those oils and things were quite expensive and could only be afforded by the wealthy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So according to Egyptologist Salima Akrem, some corpses were simply filled with juniper oil to dissolve the organs before burial instead of having them precisely removed and things like that.
Interesting.
Perhaps the best known mummy in modern history is, of course, King Tut, commonly known to have been in his tomb and found in 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter. It was an exhilarating find for the team, I'm sure, yet it was destined to be overshadowed by several unexplained deaths. And if you listened to our Don't Stop Opening the Pyramids episode, not a great thing if you believe in superstitions to just raid somebody's tomb.
Right. No, exactly.
According to folklore, disturbing a mummy's tomb then leads to death. The superstition didn't rattle Carter, however, nor stop him from exhuming Tut's tomb. Not
Useless.
cool.
I know. He should have consulted the rest of us.
For real. Still, when several people involved in his expedition died early of unnatural causes, the story was sensationalized by the media, even though the so-called curse spared Carter's life. Mummies became more than religious symbols of the ancient world in the early 20th century with the debut of Bram Stoker's novel, which we've already talked about, originally with vampires. This other novel was called The Jewel of the Seven Stars, which featured them as supernatural villains, the mummies.
Right, got it.
But it was Boris Karloff's portrayal of a mummy in 1932 movie The Mummy that made them mainstream monsters. Later movies such as The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Curse, of course, portrayed them as heavily bandaged mute beings they're known as today. And fictional mummies can't feel pain like other horror monsters are hard to kill, the most effective way being to send them to a permanent demise is to set them on fire. So again,
really fire is your friend if you're dealing with anything supernatural.
You need fire and trees. That's what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Despite being real and creepy, mummies don't have the same notoriety. I can't say notoriety. Notoriety as zombies, werewolves, and vampires. They made change as Hollywood releases new mummy movies with spine-chilling storylines and, of course, unnerving special effects. So, good. That's a mummy. I don't know.
Also,
why
an easy Halloween. Oh, yeah. So Jinx has been messing up. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. That's hilarious.
I was going to say mummies are a very easy Halloween costume because you really just need a roll of toilet paper and then you're a mummy. Done.
Easy done. That's right. On to ghosts. So these have more to do with ghost stories. Ghosts are so prevalent. There's ghost hunters. There's like all of these things out in media and have been for a very long time, a lot like these other ones. But this in particular is discussing American ghost stories because all cultures have spooky tales as such.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe in ghosts, Kirsten?
Yeah. I do. I think, yeah. I don't necessarily subscribe to the they're there to like hurt you and torment you. I mean, sure, maybe some
Right.
do,
Yeah.
but I also am like, look, man, like we got to share space, so we got to be cool. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Anyway, I also think that tangent. I also think that sometimes people who bring bad energy diffuse bad energy into the space. So sometimes if somebody is coming in with like poor intent or a poor energy around you, you
Sure.
may chalk things up that are going wrong to ghosts or something like that. But in reality, I think energy has a lot to do with it too.
Fair.
I think what you put out, you get back in a lot
I
of
agree.
instances.
Totally. I agree. Absolutely.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
I think if they do exist, I think there's a lot of them that are just kind of there,
Yeah.
they don't really have malicious intent. But every once in a while, you hear of that. I also like the idea of, if you're a cat owner, you know that your cat
Yeah.
sometimes like meows at
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. That's
And
our
I
friend.
like the idea that my cat can see something that's not there. Or like that, or see something that is there that I can't see, rather.
Also, anytime my cats do that, they never look afraid. It's
Right.
always more of a curiosity.
Right.
And I think
Exactly.
that says a lot. If they are real, for example, it says a lot about their presence. Like they're
Right.
just vibing, you know?
Exactly.
And I think that's fair. We got a lot of weird stuff in this generation. They probably have no idea what's going on half the time, and I feel terrible being unable
It's our
to
cat's
explain
job to
it.
tell them what's happening.
Cougar, I'm gonna need you to explain what's going on. Meanwhile, all she speaks is cat.
Right.
It's just rough out there. So, as in many cultures, tales of spooky visitors from the grave abound throughout American history, as other cultures as well, because there's just, people die, and that's unfortunate, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Some anecdotes relate to the sightings of dead shipmen. Another famous tale involves the portrait of a forgotten beauty, and many of the enduring ghost stories describe famous men and women who have passed throughout even the White House. One such story, actually, is that of the 16th President, Abraham Lincoln. He is remembered for his vital role as the leader in preserving the Union during the Civil War and beginning the process that led to the end of slavery in the United States. He's remembered for his character, his speeches, letters, and being a man of humble origins whose determination and perseverance led him to the nation's highest office. However, he is also, of course, remembered for his quite untimely death and his supposed afterlife in the White House. Just kind of creepy. Sorry for anyone who lives there currently. That's horrifying. For the years, presidents, first ladies, guests, and members of the White House staff have claimed to have either seen Lincoln or felt his presence. The melancholy bearing of Lincoln himself and several instances of eerie prescience on his part only add to the legends of the great emancipator's ghost. By the time of his 1864 re-election, deep lines etched Lincoln's face and heavy black circles underlined his eyes. During his years as commander-in-chief, he had slept little and taken no vacations, and there may have been more to his sadness than even he would admit, because, apparently, Lincoln dreamed of his own death. That would be scary. I understand.
A little depressing.
I definitely would not sleep after that.
No.
Ward Hill Lamon, who was a close friend of the president's, wrote down what Lincoln told him on an evening in early 1865. It said, "About 10 days ago, I retired very late. I soon began to dream. There seemed to be a death-like stillness about me. Then I heard subdued sobs as if a number of people were weeping. I thought I left my bed and wandered downstairs. I arrived at the East Room, which is in the White House. Before me was a catafalque, I think that's how you say it, on which rested a corpse wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people, some gazing mournfully upon the corpse, whose face covered, others weeping pitifully. 'Who is dead in the White House?' I demanded one of the soldiers. 'The president,' was his answer. 'He was killed by an assassin.'" End quote. That's creepy.
If you haven't already, now would be the time to like dim the lights in your room, turn on a pumpkin spice candle, and just get yourself a nice cup of tea or coffee or whatever, and just listen to Kirsten tell these beautiful ghost stories. Continue.
I thought about having an entire pod of just us telling ghost stories.
That would be so
super
fun.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We'll have to think
Maybe
about
that's
it.
what we should do on stream.
Oh, maybe, yeah, that would be super fun. Okay, so maybe we do that. So yeah, basically, Lincoln saw himself passing or passed in his dream. And it was not the first time, apparently, that he saw his own death. Soon after his election in 1860, he'd seen a double image of his face reflected in a mirror in his Springfield, Illinois home. One was his real face, and the other a pale imitation. Lincoln's superstitious wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, did not see the mirror images, but was deeply troubled by her husband's account of the incident. She prophesied that the sharper image indicated that he would serve out his first term. The faint ghost-like image was a sign, she said, that he would be re-nominated for a second term, but would not live to complete it. And ironically, that is exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
On April 14th, 1865, President Lincoln was shot by a Southern sympathizer, John Wilkes Booth, in the back of the head as he watched Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. He died at 7:22 the next morning, which was April 15th. And it is true that the tragedy had not stalked Lincoln long before his presidential term. His beloved mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, Hanks, I don't Hanks, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, died when her son was 9, and when Lincoln's first love, Anne Rutledge, died of typhoid fever, he lapsed into a melancholy that may have led to his emotional breakdown a few years later. In 1842, at the age of 33, Lincoln married then Mary Todd Lincoln, but the union was not a particularly happy one. Mary had a mercurial temperament and a strong belief in the supernatural. It was her influence that led to her husband's interest in spiritualism, though he always regarded it with some healthy skepticism, as you should. The Lincolns had 4 sons, but only Robert Todd lived to adulthood. Edward died at age 4, and young Willie succumbed to a fever during his father's first term as president, which is super sad. Tad died at 18 after his father's death, and Lincoln was shattered by Willie's death and often visited the crypt where the child was buried. He would sit for hours weeping copiously as Miss Lincoln's urging seances were held at the White House with the hope of communicating with their dead sons.
Her sister was a witch.
Her sister was a witch. And her father smelled of elderberries. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
The results of these seances were not entirely satisfying, and it's believed that Lincoln attended only 2 of them. Liz Carpenter, who was the press secretary to Lady Bird Johnson, told author John Alexander that Mrs. Johnson believed she'd felt Lincoln's presence one spring evening while watching a television program about his death. She noticed a plaque she'd never seen before hanging over the fireplace. Or plaque, not plague. Can you imagine?
Just a virus, just like chilling there.
There was a plaque she'd never seen. It mentioned Lincoln's importance in that room in some way. Mrs. Johnson admitted feeling a strange coldness and a decided sense of unease. This disquieting apprehension has been felt by others. Grace Coolidge, wife of Calvin Coolidge, the 13th president, was the first person to report having actually seen the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. He said he stood at a window at the Oval Office, hands clasped behind his back, gazing out over the Potomac, perhaps still seeing the bloody battlefields beyond. The ghost of Lincoln was seen frequently during the administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt, when the country went through a devastating depression, then a world war. When Queen Wilhelmina, that's such a cute name. If only I could say it right, of the Netherlands, was a guest at the White House during that period, she was awakened one night by a knock on her bedroom door. Thinking it might be an important message, she got up and opened the door. The top-hatted figure of President Lincoln stood in the hallway. The Queen immediately fainted, which is unfortunate.
Like Kirsten when she gets her blood drawn.
God, this again? Get me out of here. When she came to, she was lying on the floor and the apparition had vanished. which would be spooky, to be fair. That would make my blood pressure drop.
Yeah.
Eleanor Roosevelt used Lincoln's bedroom as her study, which would not be my first choice. And although she denied seeing the former president's ghost, she did admit to feeling his presence whenever she worked late at night. She thought he was standing behind her, peering over her shoulder. So nosy is what I'm getting out of that.
Yeah.
Stories of a ghostly President Lincoln wandering the corridors and rooms of the White House persist, but are not officially acknowledged. The gangly prairie lawyer with the black stovepipe hat and long, sad face was the kind of a man whom legends naturally collect. If one were to believe in ghosts, one would have to believe that the benevolent spirit of Abraham Lincoln, one of our greatest presidents, according to this article, still watches over the nation he fought so gallantly to preserve.
Lovely.
And that's Lincoln's ghost. And now we come to a crescendo with, I would say out of all of these, probably the most iconic and well-known, quote, monsters, if you will. The devil.
Dun, dun, dun.
Every culture has some form of this. So it's just what it is. You know?
It is what it is. You're so right.
It really is. He is what he is, I guess. I don't know. Anybody seen Lucifer Morningstar? It's great. I got through the first season and that was it. Yeah, it's not bad. Anyway, the devil is also referred to as Satan and is known as the nemesis of good people everywhere. Although the devil is present in some form in many religions and can be compared to some mythological gods, he's arguably best known for his role in Christianity, of course. His image and story have evolved over the years, but this malevolent, that's awful. His malevolent being and his legion of demons continue to strike fear in people as the antithesis of all things good. Although the devil is present in some form in many religions, modern biblical translations do consider the devil to be the adversary directly of God and God's people. It's commonly thought that the devil first showed up in the Bible in the book of Genesis as, of course, the serpent who convinced Eve, who then convinced Adam, to eat forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. As the story goes, after Eve fell for the devil's conniving ways, she and Adam were then banished from the garden and doomed to mortality. Many Christians believe the devil was once a beautiful angel named Lucifer, who then defied God and fell from grace. This assumption that he is a fallen angel is often based the book of Isaiah in the Bible, which says,
Isaiah.
Look, listen here.
I'm just trying to clarify. That's all.
Isaiah, you name
I know what you meant. We know what you meant.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning star? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? I guess it weakened the nations.
Great.
It's rude. Some biblical scholars, however, claim Lucifer isn't a proper name, but a descriptive phrase meaning morning star, which is why it's called Lucifer Morning Star in the series. Still, the name stuck, and the devil is often referred to as Lucifer, so they're considered synonymous.
Okay.
Other names, however, can be Prince of Darkness, Beelzebub, Mephistopheles, Baphomet, Lord of the Flies, which is a great book, the Antichrist, Father of Lies, Moloch, or simply Satan. My favorite, if you had to ask me, is actually Mephisto, because in the newest Diablo series, he is a dog, and I love that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's a demon dog, but he's
right.
a dog, so.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying.
Very nice.
The book of Ezekiel includes another biblical passage Christians refer to as proof of the devil's existence. It admonishes the greedy king of Tyre, but also refers to the king as a cherub who was once in the Garden of Eden. As a result, some Bible translators believe that the king of Tyre was a personification of the devil. The devil makes more appearances, of course, in the Bible, especially in the New Testament. Jesus and many of his apostles warned people to stay alert for the devil's cunning enticements that would lead them to ruin. And it was the devil who tempted Jesus in the wilderness to fall down and worship him in exchange for riches and glory, which Jesus did not do, of course. Most other religions and cultures teach of an evil being who roams the earth wreaking havoc and fighting against the forces of good. In Islam, the devil is known as Shaitan, and like the devil in Christianity, it is also thought to have rebelled against God. In Judaism, Satan is a verb instead of a noun, and generally refers to a difficulty or temptation to overcome instead of a literal being.
Yeah, because in Judaism, there's no hell.
Right. So it's like the action is the problem.
Correct.
In Buddhism, Mara is the demon that tempted Buddha away from his path of enlightenment. So much like Jesus of Christianity resisted the devil, Buddha also then resisted temptation and defeated Mara. In people of almost any religion, or even in those who don't follow a religion, the devil is almost always synonymous with fear, punishment, negativity, and immorality. Perhaps the most lasting images are associated with hell and the devil together, which the Bible refers to as a place of everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Still, the Bible doesn't state the devil will reign over hell, just that he'll eventually be banished there, which I don't think a lot of people know.
Yeah, but I think people get confused with like Hades and like that situation.
Yes.
Because Hades is the ruler of the underworld.
Right.
Yeah.
So just fact check, everyone, okay? Fact checks. The idea that the devil governs hell may have come from a poem by Dante Alighieri, which I understand. The Divine Comedy, published in the early 14th century. In this poem, God created hell when he threw the devil and his demons out of heaven with such power that they created an enormous hole in the center of the earth. In his poem, Dante portrayed the devil as a grotesque winged creature with 3 faces, each chewing on a devious sinner, whose wings blew freezing cold winds throughout hell's domain, which to me is kind of like counterintuitive if you're in a fire pit. You're going to freeze everything at the same time? It's interesting.
Did it say that it was a fire pit? Because hell sometimes is hot. Like some people depict it as hot.
Hell is so hot.
Sometimes they depict it as
old
cold.
And desolate.
Yeah. And then there's like all of the 7 layers of hell and Dante's Inferno, like that whole thing. So it really just depends on what you're looking at.
The thing is, as descriptive as Dante is about what the devil looks like, the Bible doesn't actually describe him in that much detail. Early artistic interpretations of the Divine Comedy feature shocking images of the devil and his demons inflicting almost unimaginable human suffering, only emboldened people's thoughts about hell and the devil, of course, so they just took that and ran with it. By the Middle Ages, the devil had taken on the appearance of the horned, trident-wielding figure with hooves for feet and a long tail, an image that has endured to modern times. Fear of the devil is at least partially reasonable, of course, for the witchcraft hysteria of Europe and New England in the 16th and 17th centuries, which we did talk about with the witches. Protestants and Catholics alike accused many people of practicing witchcraft or then making deals with said devil. And the Puritans living in New England's early colonies were petrified. Naturally. Like, I kind of feel like if you're given that image and you're giving that rhetoric, of course you're going to be scared.
Right. Yeah. No, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, for sure. So they believed he gave powers to witches who were then faithful to him. And of course, this gave rise to the Salem witch trials and other alike in the New England area. The Puritans' strict lifestyle, the fear of outsiders, and their terror of so-called devil's magic led them to accuse all of those people. This article claims that instead of the 100 something, it was actually 200, and instead of 18, it was like 20. I think the numbers are just kind of all over the place, and I don't think they reported all of the ones that were actually killed because of this, because that would be insane.
Right.
There was definitely more, in my opinion. Even so, throughout history, the devil's reputation.
You're doing great.
I'm doing so good. There's been a lot of material. As an evildoer hasn't changed. Most Christians still believe he's literally transformed the world and is responsible for much of the world's corruption and chaos. Not all religions do shun the devil, though, so people of the Church of Satan, known as Satanists, of course, don't worship the devil, but embrace him as a symbol of atheism, pride, and liberty, among other things. Other types are theistic Satanists, who actually do worship the devil as a deity, so there is a difference there. They may practice satanic rituals or even make satanic pacts. There's, of course, no shortage of Hollywood films featuring the devil, and given the immense draw of the classic battle between good and evil, it is likely that the devil's influence is here to stay, and they'll continue to influence religion and pop culture alike. Fun times, I guess. I don't, you know, whatever.
Well, and on that note,
yeah.
I thought the transition was going to come to me and it didn't.
Oh, well,
I know.
That sucks.
It's fine. Well, we hope you guys have a very happy Halloween. I know this comes out a little bit before that.
Yeah.
But we won't be releasing an episode on Halloween this year. So
that's true, because
we hope you have a very
plans.
happy Halloween. Listen to this on Halloween if you feel so inclined.
Oh, heck yeah.
Educate yourself on what's out there on Halloween. October does have a Friday the 13th this month. It also has a full like super moon thing. So just be aware.
Right. It's chocked full this October.
It is.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's a spooky one. So with that being said, this wraps up our episode of Mediocre Content. Feel free to send us an email with any questions, comments, concerns, episode topic suggestion, ghost stories at mediocrecontentpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Mediocre Content Podcast, or catch up with us every other Thursday on Twitch at Mediocre Content Podcast at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or at 11 p.m. BST.
I wish
don't forget to rate us. So do I. Don't forget to rate us 5 stars anywhere you listen to podcasts. And as always, we'll be seeing you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.